I was in practice with my dad and brother in Winneconne, and I was a fifth dentist. Had a lot of school bills and rent and equipment, and I was anywhere between $500,000 and $1 million in debt. We had a hard time paying the bills. So we went to our pastor, and he said, "Are you tithing?" I said, "What's that?" And he explained what that is, and that it really comes down to where your heart is. So we started tithing, and things just did not get better. We decided, I think it's time that I file bankruptcy. And Carla went to the post office, added up the checks, and God provided. It's been quite a journey for us. You start tithing and you watch how God blesses you. He just absolutely took my practice and it blossomed from at the point of bankruptcy to have one of the top practices in the state of Wisconsin. He will bless you. It's not just financially. Next, what happened is that our pastor told us about the 5 missionaries that were killed in Ecuador, evangelizing the tribes and what their sacrifice was. And we decided that we wanted to do that. A friend of mine from Florida, who's a dentist, said, "Well, I'm going on a missions trip to Guyana. Would you come along?" At that point, things were still very tight for us. I said, "Lord, if you would provide for us, we'll go." So Monday morning came around, and I had 2 new patients. They said, "We've been neglecting our teeth for many years, and we want to get our teeth fixed up." So I went through a treatment plan for both of them, and it was well over $10,000. And I guess we're going on a missions trip.
We just realized through our tithing that He would always provide what He wanted us to do. So we would put out a fleece. Do you want us to go on this trip? This is the amount of money it will cost, and Lord, you have to provide that. And He always did.
So we went to Guyana, worked very hard. It was very hot. This group was also with Billy Graham. I still did my dentistry during the day, and at night they would do the revival meetings. And we had a elderly lady come up and talk to us.
She said, "I feel so bad for you." She said, "I'll pray for you." She was living in a cardboard box. And we said, "Why do you feel bad for us?" And she said, "Because as Americans, you have everything you need and you don't need God." She said, "I need God for my next meal." She said, "And you have all your needs met." She said, "So I'll pray for you."
Our next trip was to Haiti. That's a whole different culture from most places. It's demonic. It is not a nice place. We get there and got to a church. This is just a brick church in the middle of nowhere. Started doing extractions. We had a medical team, evangelistic team, and did dental work. And it was extremely hot. So maybe 100 people a day. That night, they started a voodoo ceremony across the street from us. So we were just crawling into bed, and the missionary says, "Does anybody want to go with me down to the voodoo thing?" And my son jumps up and darts out the door. I said, "No, you're not." And "What are you doing?" And I'm chasing after him. And I catch up to him down at where the ceremony was. You could smell the drugs, and people were really just freaking out. You could tell somebody was being raped. We walked into the camp, and somebody was cooking on the grill, and it was 2 hands on the grill. And I tell you, every hair on my body was raised and scared as could be. I'm praying like crazy. And a missionary walks up to the witch doctor that's there. They started pushing. There's about 100 people, just pushed us together as tight as we could. And I thought for sure, oh boy, we're done. And all of a sudden, two guys pulled knives and started stabbing each other. And the crowd sort of focused on them, and then we backed out of there. They came around our church all night long doing their ceremony. At that time, the guy that led us down there was in severe pain. In the morning, we get up, and there's a voodoo doll nailed to the tree, resembling our leader. And we took it off the tree, and the pain left him immediately. So there are definitely demonic forces there.
But God's power is greater.
Yeah, and he still protected us. When we got to the village, the first time that we went there, there was a little child, maybe 1.5 to 2 years old. He was a twin, and they believed that twins are a curse. And so the mother was starving him to death. So his arms were like this and just barely breathing. The doctors gave him an antibiotic and a aspirin because he had 105 fever. Everybody laid hands on him and prayed for him. And within an hour, that child was up and running around and praying. That was absolutely a miracle. And on almost every missions trip, God has showed himself like that. For us or the people there, what we found is that we go there to bless these people by helping them with the medical and dental, but actually we're the ones that get blessed the most. It affects our hearts and our minds. One of our next trips was to Honduras. This I call my miracle trip. We support a girl in World Visions, and since we were going down to that country and it was the same town, we wanted to meet up with her and bless her, and her mom were supposed to meet us at the airport. On our way down, the pilot came on and said, "It is raining too hard, there are such severe storms there, we can't land." And so we got up and prayed, and within 10 minutes, the pilot came back and says, "We've got a window, we're gonna land." And the plane just went like this and swooped down in, and we landed, waited for the young girl, and she never showed up at the airport. So we went to the motel, and here she's sitting at the motel. I said, "How did you know to come here?" "We just guessed." And so we got to see her. The doctors did exams for her and the mother and checked them out, and we were able to give them gifts. The next day, we were supposed to leave for the jungle, and it was raining so hard that we couldn't leave. And about 3 o'clock, the rain broke and the sun came out, and there was a professional soccer game just up the street from us. And a friend of mine, Dr. Dave Angel, brought like 10,000 tracts along with him. As the soccer game got out, we started going up towards the stadium and handing out tracts. We got to witness more there than we ever could have before. And people would come up to us and grab us. "What does this mean? What does this mean?" And the translators would be able to translate for them. And some prayed to receive the Lord right there. But, God couldn't have done anything more perfect than that to reach so many people. So we got in an army truck, the flatbed of an army truck, and drove up through the jungles. We crossed 2 rivers. that were just, maybe that deep. And once we got set up, it started raining like I've never seen rain before in my life for almost 10 days. And same thing, we'd see about 100 people a day, but the missionary said we have to leave to get out of here or we'll never get out of here. What we didn't know is that this was a hurricane. We got on the army truck to leave, and the missionary said if the water gets up to the flatbed of the truck, it's just going to roll us over. We just prayed, and we left, and we got to the river and got in the middle of the river and got stuck. And the water's right up to the flatbed, and we get in the middle and just pray again. Within 5 minutes, a Army Humvee came across, was on the other side of the river, and had this much extra cable to hook onto us. Got back into town, and we got in one of the stores, and on the radio it said the village that we just left had a mudslide and killed 103 people that we were just witnessing to. And the bridge that we crossed half hour ago just collapsed into the river. And the next morning we tried to get out, and the same thing, we were at the airport and said we can't leave because it's raining so hard. So we got up again as a group and prayed, and the Lord stopped the rain. We got on board, we took off, and that was the last plane to leave that country for a month. We felt like we were just in the palm of his hand through the whole trip. He protected us. We're sitting at the bedside of my mom on hospice, and they said she just has a day or a week or two left. I get a call from my friend, said, I got a trip going to Cambodia. Do you want to come along? And I said, I can't because of what's going on, but I'll pray about it. And we prayed, and the Lord says, I have a gift for you. And I'm thinking, what kind of gift do you have for me with my mother? I don't understand. And he said, I have a gift for you. Go on the trip. So I decided to go, and with the next day or two, I was talking with my mom and told her that I was going to go on this trip, and she says, how can you leave your family and your wife with little kids and go across the world? I said, Mom, God has us in his hands no matter what. So she passed away. So I went on the missions trip. We get over to Cambodia. We're working on an island in the middle of the river, a place that has never had medical or dental ever before, and helping these people and evangelizing these people. And when I work like a madman. I am as fast as I can, as many teeth as I can extract, and I'm totally wiped out when I'm done. So we get back and we have our prayer time and worship time. And as we're worshiping, I hear an audible voice from my mom. Now I see and now I understand what you do and why. So that was my miracle. My next trip was to Sierra Leone. That was right after 9/11, and security was tremendous. Weeks before, we had an ice storm, and on the way home, a car came over the top of the hill, and I went completely in the ditch, and she hit me head on. I hit a culvert, and it launched my truck straight up in the air. I saw the cross pieces of the telephone pole out the side of my window, and I came and landed straight down like this. I held the steering wheel so tight, my chest and my head never hit the steering wheel, but it transferred all that to my shoulders and my back. I walked away from there, but I had severe back pain, and I'm supposed to go to Sierra Leone. Went to the doctor, a pain doctor, and he showed Carla how to give me anesthetic in the back. So in the mornings, I would get 14 shots of anesthetic down my back so I could work. And went over to Sierra Leone like that. I wanted to do this for the Lord, and taking like 11 different meds just to get through. On the fly over to Paris, we'd get pulled off the plane. There was a bomb threat on the plane, and they took us all off. Flew to Guinea, I think, is the country above it, Sierra Leone. We get loaded up in the plane, and there's no more seats, and there's more people that have to get on. So they put 2 people in the cockpit. They filled the center aisle full of luggage and cargo boxes. We took off, and we get up, and there's a severe storm. Lightning hits the plane, and we literally dropped about 100 feet. People that weren't buckled in were plastered on the ceiling, and kids are screaming. Everybody is screaming. The cabin fills with smoke. But the Lord had us in His hand. We just prayed. I prayed, and we landed, and had to transfer to a Russian helicopter. And the week before we left, they gave a warning of do not use Russian helicopters, but that was the only way we had to go. Same thing, they filled us in the helicopter, and then they packed, I couldn't even turn my head, with boxes in the center of it. And he tried taking off 5 times. He'd get up, slam back down, try that 5 times, and he got up, and then we got across the river to where we're supposed to camp and stay for the day. What we were doing there is we were going from amputee camp to amputee camp. This was at the end of the war. We get there, and we get greeted by the minister of religion. He looked at me and he said, right now, you are the only doctor in this country. Everybody else has fled. The rebels had come into the city, and what they did, instead of killing people, they would cut their arms and legs off to maim them, because it would take 10 people to take care of them instead of killing them. And it was extremely brutal. We went from camp to camp, doing extractions, we had nurses along that did medical. So it was very traumatic. Next trip was going to Guatemala. I said to Carla, God is still providing for us with my back and everything, and I still want to go on missions trips. And this time we brought our whole family with us. Towards the end of the week, we had a prayer meeting, and the pastor at the church that we were working at noticed that Carla was giving me the shots in the back so I could work. And he says, why don't you come down front? So they all came down and prayed for me. And that night, God touched my back and healed it. Took away about 90% of my pain. I threw away 11 different meds. So God healed me. During this time, we're going to Christ the Rock, and at that time they're talking about having satellite churches. So we put a addition on our house, a big addition. And at that time, Carla came down with cancer.
I went in for some routine testing, and they found out I had stage 4 colon cancer. And I needed surgery 2 days from now. We had called everyone we knew and asked them to pray. And so far, everything has been fine. And both the doctor and his nurses all call me the Miracle Lady.
We never ended up doing the satellite church, but what we did do is we would have Pastor Steve Schrepfer would come to our house and we'd have music ministry. And then we also had a gentleman from Iowa that had a healing ministry. So he came to our house and we would have the same thing. At some times we had almost 100 people in our living room. And we tried to do that as often as we could. Every way that we could serve the Lord, we tried to do. Because he was so merciful to me and us. One of my desires was to meet Steve Saint, which is Nate Saint's son. And during EAA, they would come up, and he happened to have a toothache. And they said, well, we know a dentist that does missions work. So they brought him out to me, and I got to meet him and his wife, and Minkai, the Indian that speared his father. And if you've never heard of the story, he evangelized the tribe, and they went out as evangelists around the world. And we've gotten to have a great relationship with them. We went on 3 trips down to Ecuador. One trip we got to go back in the jungle where Steve's dad was speared. It was quite the experience. But on other trips we were able to took our dental equipment along, and Minkai came alongside me and helped doing extractions, and some previous team taught Minkai how to do extractions, and he was fantastic at it. We also went to Suriname. In the TSA, someone stole my anesthetic syringes. So I ended up going to Suriname, and I didn't have any anesthetic syringes. In the last trip to Ecuador, someone in TSA stole all my instruments. It was worth over $10,000 worth of instruments, all my forceps, my anesthetic syringes, everything. And they just made it extremely hard for us to do work. So Carla and I decided is that a soul is a soul, whether it's in Suriname or the U.S. All along we've been trying to serve the Lord at the office, but we sort of boosted it up a lot. One night I worked from like 7:30 in the morning through my lunch hour, through the sup hour, and we're just ready to walk out the door, and a lady walks in, swelling up to this, and she got down on her hands and knees and begged me to help her. She had been turned away by 3 other dentists, and there's no way I could turn her down. So we opened it up again, and she had 3 abscessed teeth in her jaw. This woman was in such extreme pain and infection. If she was going to be seen, she probably would have died. These people are suffering, whether they're here or in Honduras or wherever. They need to be seen and need to be taken care of. If they're my patients, they are treated like my family, like my wife or kids or anybody else. There's no discretion between the two, and that's the way I ran my practice. And God blessed us tremendously for that. We would have people call and say, I'm having surgery tomorrow. Would you pray for me? And we would. Jesus held us in the palm of his hand. He wants us to have not just tithe, but he wants a relationship. A lot of people, they do their daily reading. They pray for an hour. But how about expand that to walking through the day that you're holding God's hand? He wants all of you. And just surrender your heart to him. Surrender your business. Surrender your family to him.
He has shown us his power and how we are under his power. When I had cancer, I wasn't worried, because our days are numbered before we've ever seen one of them. So if that is the number of my days, he has been so good to us. How can I question that? And I was very thankful it wasn't, but we were at peace.
He'll watch over you. Yes, you may go through cancer, but even with that, if that went south for Carla, she'd be all right, and we would be all right, because we're in his hands. And there's no better place to be than in his hands.